What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of 10K on the Bay. This is our series with tech and sports. We're doing, this is part 3 of 8 for how to build a $1,000 a week clothing business, or it applies to any type of eBay business. But today we're going to go over the process of listing items. This is one of those episodes where I think people really get stuck, and it can be a big time suck if you're not operating your listing practices properly. So hopefully this will be super useful for you. Tech, how's your day? How's everything?
Going pretty good. Just took my pictures and ready to rock and roll.
Cool. So just to roadmap this episode for you guys, we're going to talk about prepping items, photography, descriptions, item specifics, maybe if we use business policies or not, templates, do we use a computer or not, and then are we using any VAs or extra help to help us list more items. Let's get started with prep. So items, you just get back from sourcing. Where do the items go for you?
For me, I leave the bags there for maybe 1 or 2 days. And then after that, I go through, take off all the tags, and then I put them in a big stack. So right now I have like probably 300 items in the queue. It's not necessarily a death pile, but it's a queue for me in case, it rains on the weekend and garage sales are out, or if a thrift store is kind of dry that day. So I do have some items in the queue, but I just stack them all up in a pile and then I work from there.
So I have the same system, but I want to go a little bit more in depth on that with you. So I have 3 stacks. I have a stack of bottoms, a stack of tops, and then a stack of shoes. Do you differentiate that at all for time, or is it all in one pile?
It's all one pile, and then I have another little table next to it where I have like hats or shoes or other miscellaneous goods that if let's say I'm going to do 50 today and 2 or 3 of them I see have a stain while I'm taking pictures. So then I have 47 clothing items, and then I'll toss in 3 hats to make it 50. So it's only separated like that. It's not separated by individual clothing item.
Gotcha. So what do you do with the ones, and I think this is cool because you're looking over the item once again. What do you do with the items that are stained or torn? Is there a separate pile?
If they're stained, I have like a hamper next to where I take pictures. Once the hamper's full, then it gets washed. The reason why I don't differentiate between like shirts, pants, such and such, because when you list your new items, you do get that initial bump for the new items. So if you listed all pants, I don't know, to me, I'd rather have a bump on several different items than just one item that day. So that's why I don't differentiate anything.
That makes sense. And then when you're cutting the tags off, do you use scissors, or how do you cut the tags off?
Usually they come on either with staples, they staple into the collar and I just take them off, or they come on the little plastic tab. I just hold the plastic tab and rip off the paper. And I've always left the plastic tab in the pictures, and only 1 or 2 people have ever messaged me and said, maybe take off the Goodwill tag if you want to try to sell this. But I just reply and say that that's my inventory system. So this shirt goes in the green section, or this one goes in the red section. So I don't waste more time removing all the plastic tabs and stuff like that. I just take a picture and sell it.
That is interesting. So you just take the paper part of it off.
Yeah.
Okay. I do the same process, but I just use scissors because sometimes I was damaging the garment by tearing the tag off. But that wouldn't happen if I only tore the paper part off. So that definitely is a time savings.
The reason why I don't use scissors is because then the plastic piece is in 2 pieces, and then it turns into such a mess sometimes. So I just leave it on, hold the plastic, pull off the paper.
So when you ship, do you use poly mailers?
For clothing, yes.
So then what do you do with the little piece, the tab that you peel off? Does that go, is there a garbage can nearby, or how do you handle that? Because that can get messy too.
The plastic tab, like from Goodwill, like the green or the blue one?
No, I mean the plastic tag on the poly mailer, when you, the sticky part.
Oh, yeah, those ones I just put on the table, and the table has like static electricity, so they all stick together. I just put it on the corner of the table, and then when I'm done, grab them, throw them in the trash.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's a good idea because some people have, like for me, I put a piece of double-sided tape right by the garbage can. I just stick it to that as I'm going. And then at the end, I put it all into the garbage. because I
Yeah,
see
yeah,
people
yeah,
throwing those
definitely.
all over the place, and then they have another mess to clean up later. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
so when you peel off that paper tag, do you just throw it away right away, or is there a stack of those paper things?
There's a stack of them till I'm done. I just grab a handful and throw it away.
Okay, that's cool for prep. Then at that point, since you sell primarily clothing, do you measure at that point, or do you what's after you have they're all prepped?
Then they go into the stack, and then like today, if I'm gonna do 50, then I just grab the first 50 in the stack. That's when I measure.
Gotcha. And with your measuring process, do you leave the ruler on the table, or do you measure with the tape each time, or how do you measure?
I actually use a tape measure. I look at the front real quick. I lay it front down, and then I use a tape measure, pit to pit, collar down the back, and then I'm able to get a picture of the front and a picture of the back for not a literal picture, but I'm able to look at it, and then that way I can see if there's any defects on it one more time.
Okay. So your prep is from the bag to the pile.
Yep. And then
Okay.
from the pile, that's where I do however many I'm going to do that day.
Okay. So that's twice now you've looked over the item, which is cool. So
Well,
then,
3 times because I've looked over it at the thrift store too.
okay, at the store. So that's three times you looked over the item again. And how often do you find stuff again, like the third time you've looked, like a defect?
Um, I don't know, less maybe 5%.
Yeah, I would say, but that's the thing is that's 5% more returns if you didn't do it a third time.
Yeah, there's no way that you can miss stuff like that because it's definitely going to come back.
Gotcha. Okay, so now it's all measured. How do you record the measurements?
Just on a piece of paper, nothing fancy. I just write them down. I draw a little line every 10 so I know while I'm listing how many more I have left. But other than that, it's just on a regular piece of paper, nothing fancy.
Okay, and on that process, this prep photography part, are you sitting? Are you standing?
Yeah, I'm sitting down. I have like a coffee table in the front, and I have a couch where I take the pictures. So I sit on that. That's also the same place where I pack items.
Gotcha. So that's like a eBay area.
Yeah, that's it. A
And
little
wait,
coffee
that
table and a couch.
you also take photographs there?
Yeah, just to the right of the coffee table is where I have the rug that serves as the background.
Gotcha. So that's literally everything in your eBay business happens in that small area.
Yeah, probably 15 by 15.
15 by 15. So that's pretty large. Does that mean it's also stored there?
Just the stuff that's in the queue. But like I said last episode, I have a duplex where I store everything.
Okay.
So the living room serves as the prep, the pictures, the packing area, and then everything would be stored in the bedrooms or the closets and stuff like that.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so then now it's measured. You have a piece of paper with all the measurements on it. Are you now, where do you list?
I list which would be in a kitchen. So not the kitchen, the dining room is where I list. So the dining room in the duplex has 4 desks in it. One side I have a computer and 2 tables from IKEA that I do Amazon. One side I have a computer and 2 tables that I do eBay, and then I have a printer in the corner.
And do you print your labels there?
Yep, I print all the labels from eBay and Amazon right there. So the the tables are kind of a V shape, and it backs into a corner where the printer is there, so it's easy access for both things, eBay and Amazon.
Okay, so at that point, do you list all 50 in just one sitting?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and this can all happen in one morning.
Well, you figure measurements. If you're doing 50, you can do one in 30 seconds. If I mean, that's not extremely fast. So that's 20, 25 minutes on measurements. I think you can take pictures in 30 seconds. So that's another 20, 25 minutes. So you're at 40 to 50 minutes. And then it takes me about an hour to list 50 items. So all in 2 hours for the whole thing.
Okay. That's amazing. That is awesome. The process is relatively similar for me. The stuff comes in on a bag or in boxes. I unload it. I'm going to prep the item. I'm now entering it in on a computer with the item location. So I put in this is the same thing except for when I'm measuring the item, I'm tagging it with where it's going to be stored. And then for me, on the listing side, it's identical to what you described, except for I'm using a virtual assistant to list based on the spreadsheet and the photos. And the photo has the tag. So, example like A001, and that would correspond with the spreadsheet A001. So they match up the pictures and the listing and do it. And it's definitely a system that will create more returns, because anytime you add an extra process, like I have to build a spreadsheet that you don't have to, and I also have to build a Dropbox where the photos live. Anytime you add one more level of complexity, stuff will get mixed up. So when I was doing all the listing myself, I made way less errors because it was just, I knew where everything was. It was smaller, and I didn't have any issue listing 40 items a month. I'm sorry, 40 items per day, my first month doing this without anything. So I think it's definitely reasonable for people to do 40 plus listings a day in a few hours if it's all like right in a row.
Right. So like for me, like I've never used a VA. So when you say you have a sheet with measurements, and let's say it's A100, that's the first one. So your pictures, how do they match up the pictures? Do you have to rename all the pictures for them to match?
So the way that I did it originally was I had the first picture was A001. It was a picture of the clothing pin that had the number on it, but I
Okay, so
switched.
every clothing pin was a new item.
Right. But now I switched to the first and the last picture is the clothing pin. So the VA can just upload the pictures in between those two clothespins. And then
Right,
also
it's
in
the
the
wrong pin.
clothespin there's the, so in my custom SKU, I put the clothespin number and the date. So that way, because when you're using a VA, you will lose more items. And the reason is because eventually the VA will enter in the wrong pictures. So
Right,
when that happens, because I have the date in the custom SKU, I can now go to the folder, because I save all my photos right now, and I
mm,
can look up where that item is. So if they forget to put the clothing pin number in the listing, I can go still find it based on when it was listed. So I think the more redundancies you can build in without wasting too much time, you can actually find items that you misrepresent. Because that I didn't have that at first, and then my VA accidentally didn't put the number in, and then there's no way to find it.
right. Because every day, like people message me on Instagram and they say, "Oh, do you have a VA to do all these, this, and that?" Or if you don't, you should get a VA. But the reason why I never did that route was because a little bit before you started, maybe 3 or 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, eBay had a policy for the detailed seller rating, a DSR policy. And if they had a defect rate, and if your defect rate went over like 3%, you were done. Like
Hmm.
they would kick you off of eBay. So to me, to have someone else do that, and with a strict policy of 3% defect, even wrong size doesn't fit was defect. Like every return you got was a defect. Like I was always so scared to put that into someone else's hands. Like if there was a mistake, I wanted me to make the mistake. I didn't want someone else to make that mistake, and then my eBay business is done.
That's a
So
great point.
yeah, so like that's the only reason why like I never used any programs or never used a VA or even hired help to do it, because there was such strict policies on eBay where you could be done overnight or done in 3 weeks or a month if you had errors in the listing. And I don't know, that was just way too risky.
This is a good point, and I want to bring up another strategy that some people do. So, because even now, it's still 5%. Um, Actually, no, it's lower than that. The defect, you can't have if you have several defects in a row, you could definitely have your account suspended. And I don't know what your opinion on this, but I wanted to ask. There are some people that say occasionally when I do mess up, what I'll do is I'll just go on the PayPal, refund their money. I'll try to communicate with them, but I won't do it through the eBay system. I'll refund the money through PayPal, so I don't get the defect if I screw up, and I just eat the eBay cost, as long as the buyer is okay with that. I don't know what is your opinion if you make a mistake.
Well, now it doesn't matter. But going back to the defect system, you know how they have the 5-star rating? Any rating of 3 or less, even with a positive feedback, was a defect. Any return was a defect. It was very difficult back then to maintain top rated seller, and to even like they were kicking off people left and right. If you had over 3%, you were done. But now, as long as you work it out with the customer, you get no defects. Like I get returns all the time. that just comes with selling in bulk. And my defect rate is 0. The only way how you get a defect on eBay now is if you cancel the order because you're out of stock, or you don't refund them if they open a case and you let it go to arbitration through eBay. Then they're going to give you a defect. But if you take back every single item and you refund the people, you'll never have a defect. Or if you don't go out of stock, you'll never have a defect.
I agree. I have about, my returns are a little bit higher than I'd like it. Almost 5% now. They're like 4.9, and that's because of using a VA. They're going to make some mistakes. I think that's important. If you guys are going to use a VA, like, nobody cares about your business like you do. They're literally being paid either per piece or hourly, and they're not as dedicated to you. And that's normal. Like, if you're going to use virtual assistants or help, they're not going to do the same thing as you unless they're an equal equity partner, which they're not. So the expectations need to be like, I'm hoping this person can do 80% of the process. And for me, when they draft the item or make it in the library on like InkFrog or 6-Bit, I'm trying both of those listing softwares, I am only expecting them to do 80% right. I go back and I still look over the draft and approve it. And we're talking about me only saving, I'd say, an hour. So like, it's not me using 2 people to help me, a photographer and a virtual assistant, is only saving me an hour a day. So most people do have that extra hour. You definitely do not need help. Unless you're over 50 to 100 items a day, then I think it would be difficult. But 50 to 100 a day, you can do by yourself, because there's plenty of examples of that, including yourself.
Right. So like, you at the end of the year or at some point have to figure out if paying the photographer and the VA is worth the extra hour. So like, as a business, those are the kind of things that you have to run through, because like you said, if they're drafting them and everything, and then you have to proofread the drafts, if it takes you 30 seconds to proofread, for me, it takes 1 minute to get it up. So like, I don't know if that cost is worth it to me. That's why I've never done that. You know what I mean?
And I also want to point out that right now, I'm not saving the hour because I need to spend the time training the VA, and I need to make sure processes are updated and improved. And I was giving my VA $10 every time we find something that we can do better, so I can try to improve it. And after time, I mean, it might make sense for me to just do it myself because the process will be so clean.
Yeah.
But if you hire someone, like if you paid your mom to come watch you list and just write down how you do it, your eyes are going to be open to how inefficient you are, because even now you're finding ways to do things faster.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So let's talk about descriptions. Do you use sort of a template? Do you use a cut and paste blurb? How do you deal with descriptions?
I don't use any templates or any cut and paste. I just sell similar from my own store. So if I have a jacket, let's say it's a Ralph Lauren polo jacket, I'll search my store for that, and then I'll just sell similar Ralph Lauren polo jacket from that listing that's already up.
Gotcha. Then you just change the item specifics, measurements, done?
Change the title, upload the pictures, item specifics, change maybe 5 different symbols in the description, change the price, ready to go.
So on that, do you use business policies?
No, I have no business policies set up for my whole store. I think that's something relatively new, and everything that's kind of like new, I've never adapted to because they didn't have that back when I started. So the business policies, I have none of those.
So that, in my opinion, it's one of those things where if you started without it, it doesn't hurt you so much. But as an example, if I sell shoes, hats, shirts, like for me, shirts and hats are still first class. So I have a first class male business policy, which is for me, business policy number 3. And so for my VA, he knows if it fits into certain categories, they use business policy number 3. And so when I'm going in, I am also researching price. And I think this is one of the reasons why so many people on Instagram can't list fast, is because you have to research every single item. If you're selling similar off of something you have already sold before, you have an idea of the price already, you have an idea of the shipping already, you don't need to use business policies if you sell similar off of your own, because the business policy you've already created one time before. So
yeah, correct. So like if I'm shipping a hat, sell similar, the shipping's already filled out. It's already whatever priority 495 or whatever it is. Same thing for a shirt. It's already first class 395. So whenever you sell similar, all that's already pre-filled.
Right. And so that's selling similar off of your own item is the equivalent of a business policy because it's already in there. In fact, if you're lucky, you don't even have to adjust the price.
Yeah, totally. And like for a jacket or a shirt or hat, for me, I have price points. Sometimes maybe it's 20% too high, but since I have so many items, everything does eventually sell every single day. And then if I run a markdown, then it kind of brings it to where it needs to be. So maybe that cuts down also on some research time. But, unless it's something super rare, if it's run of the mill, it's going to be the same price as everything else, So I kind of work with price points, and that's how I price everything in the beginning.
So I have a question on that. Are you looking like, can I ask what your price points are?
For hats, I'll do like around $30. For jackets, around $40. T-shirts, depending on what it is, it could be either around 30 or 20. And that's pretty much where I go. So if it's a $20 T-shirt, I'll put $19.99. I don't have to research it, and then I'll take anything 15 and up or something like that. If it's a jacket, I'll put $39.99. I'll take anything 32 and up, something like that. And unless it's something super rare, it's a $40 jacket,
How do you feel about, let's see here, the 1999 versus 20? Do you feel like that makes a difference for a buyer?
I mean, they do all these tests and stuff and experiments with shopping experience and stuff. I know if I offer someone $22 and I offer them $19.99, it's only a $2 difference, but I get people to accept the $19.99 way more often.
That's a good point. And I just wanted to point out, like, my girlfriend works for Gap Inc., and they built an entire business at like $9.99, $19.99, $34.99, $49.99, $99.99. They make things that fit into those buckets because people are conditioned to buy in those different price points. And it's literally like upside down for the number of people who buy stuff. The most people buy $9.99 stuff. And now we're talking like an Old Navy shirt, brand new, low quality, versus
Right.
like, if you go all the way to the, even at Old Navy, there are $99 jackets, coats. So,
Well, since you bring that up, that's exactly how I run my store. I got items that are worth 15, 20, 25, 30, 34, 50, the same thing. It's the same exact thing.
and it makes sense and it's proportional. So like if you're going to sell more $20 items than $100 items just because that's just how it works
Yeah, all day.
all day. Okay, so now the item you've gone through, you've done the pricing. I just want to make sure people, depending on what state you have, you also need to add sales tax. Is that something you do?
No.
You don't add sales tax, you just pay out of pocket?
So far, so good, man.
All right. Well, that's just something I want to point out. Some people do that and in their area. And then as far as the final part, do you list in a second category or just use one?
Just use one.
Okay. Sounds good. Me too. But I do think that for some people, some kids large may fit as a women's small. So I've seen people have decent success paying for that extra category if they want to sell some larger kids clothing, like boys clothing, as small for a chick.
Right.
Okay. So this being said, then what happens once now do you have a new stack of 50 once it's all listed?
Yeah, once it's all listed, I have a stack of 50 that now needs to get put away.
Okay. Actually, before that, so the items have been prepped and measured and they're like in the living room. Do you take them with you to the dining room?
Yeah, the dining room is attached. I mean, we're not talking about a mansion here. This is just a duplex. So the dining room is like, I don't know, 12 feet away from where I measure everything. So it's not very far. I put it next to me on top of an upside down tote. And I have my paper that I have all the measurements and the computer in front of me, and I'm ready to go.
And do you look it over again while listing?
Yeah, I'll have it face up while I'm listing it so I can see the size tag. I'll look at it for a little, maybe a couple seconds, and then I turn it over to my right where I have another tote where that's everything that's going to be put away. And then I turn it face down, and then I can see it one last time.
Okay, so are you you're looking it over the store while you're prepping, while you photograph, while you list, while you ship? That's 5 times.
Yeah,
Okay, last question. On the fifth, or not last question, but on that fifth last check when you ship, do you ever find a defect again?
rarely, maybe one or two a year.
Okay. That happened to me for the first time. I found a defect as I was shipping, and I messaged the buyer. I said, "Hey, I'm going to send it anyway. If you're not satisfied with it, you can just keep it, and I'll give you a full refund." And he was like, "Oh, thank you for being upfront. There is the defect, but it's all good, and not that big a deal."
Yeah, the two or the handful of times that I found it, it wasn't like a hole or anything. It was just a little spot or something. So I just threw it in the washing machine and shipped it out later that day.
That's actually a good idea too. I could have fixed the problem. It was a small stain on the cuff of the pants, and he just literally said, "I'll just cuff the pants. It's all good. Like, and maybe it'll come out when I wash it." But
Yeah.
cool. So now, I wanted to ask: do you use the phone at all for listing?
No, because when I first started, they didn't. That wasn't an option. So I've only learned how to do the computer, and that's what I do. So pretty much, like if you've learned anything during this series, like I find one way to do it, and that's what I do. I don't try new things if something's working. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Okay. And I want to just point out that when I first started, I was using the phone, and I was pretty much doing it one by one, meaning like I was new, so I was learning I was doing the item research on my phone. I would click sell similar off of an item that I found that was similar, adjust the pricing, item specifics, upload the photos straight up. And then while I uploaded the photos, I was prepping the next item. And then I just did it. So even manually with a phone, I still was able to do 40 part time when I first started. So and with a computer, it's more than twice as fast because
So
you can batch things.
yeah, so with the phone, you have to do each picture individually, right?
If the Droid, you have to do each picture individually, and with an iPhone, you can do it all at once. But you cannot do anything while the photos are uploading on either of them.
Right. So like for me, when the photos are uploaded on the computer, I'm typing away. By the time the photos are done, whole listing is done. So if the photos went faster, I can even do it faster. But that latency time of the photos going up allows me to fix the description. So while you're on the phone, you have each picture going up individually or all at once, depending on the phone, and you can't do anything. So once you do everything, um, what do? You have like an auto text feature where it puts in your template, or you're sitting on the phone typing, 30 or 40 words every single time.
So I use the program called Text Expander, and so for jeans, I type in JJJ, and it
Right.
populates the everything SSS for shirt,
Right.
and then that will populate that. And then for the condition description, I just put CCC. So like to make it as simple as possible for me to remember typing
Right.
that in, and
And
that
then the only thing you have to fix is the measurements after you type in
right.
JJJ.
That's right. You just add in the waist and inseam, and um, that's it. I haven't had any issues with because on my background I actually have the tick marks, so I
Yeah, I
can
saw
look
that.
at the picture and guess what the rise is.
Yeah, I saw that. That's pretty cool.
Um, and that's something that you guys can do is integrate that into the photos. I want to do a little bit more of an in dive on the photos. Um, and I took this from you, which is basically I can do the perfect white background, but it definitely I think over promises on a pre-owned item.
Yeah, yeah, we talked about that the other day. How people who do the perfect background or mannequins and big fancy elaborate pictures, to me maybe that sets kind of an unrealistic expectation, especially since we are getting our stuff from thrift stores and pre-owned. So, like if it was Best Buy or something, then yeah. But for me, since it is pre-owned, I want to set the expectation that it is a pre-owned item. So I'm perfectly fine with doing a flat lay and laying it on the rug. um, I think people who want to shop with white backgrounds, maybe those will tend to be more picky, and maybe your return rate will go up rather than if you're okay buying it from me, seeing it on the rug, maybe that's my kind of guy.
This is another question. Are your pictures square?
I just use a little cheap point and shoot Canon camera, and however they come out, that's how they are. So I never have to rotate. I hear that's a big problem.
Right.
Um, they come out how they are, and that's how they go up.
So, question on that. I would say the two most important parts of photographs are that, yeah, your pictures are square. Oh, actually, they're not. They're not square. So this is actually pretty interesting. They look square though. So the background, your rug is sort of gray. So what eBay will do is they'll actually add gray to the top and the bottom of your photos, and it looks square, which is good. This is actually, if you have a non-white background, when eBay adds in the extra stuff in the photo to make it look normal, your photo looks really good. There's a couple things about your photos that are really, really good in my opinion. One, there's a lot of light in the room. It's not dark. I think there's no way to sell an item properly if your room is dark.
No, and a few years ago, before I had the duplex, um, I mean, you're talking 5 years ago, there wasn't as many people doing perfect white photos, but I can definitely tell you when I did move over here, all of my stuff, and I had the window next to it, having the window right there, I saw a huge increase in sales.
Yeah, and I think that there's two things you do that ensure that you have decent sales, in my opinion. One is the pictures are bright, so there's none of them are dark, so people can actually see the detail. They can zoom in. The second is that your store looks the same.
Yeah.
It looks like a store. It doesn't look like a yard sale where every single thing is in a different place in the house.
Yeah, for my hard goods, like I said, I do the coffee table, so that is going to be a black background because the table is black. But all the other clothing pictures, they go on the rug, and that's what it is.
Yeah, I'm looking at your store right now. It's extremely consistent, and I just want to talk on this last point, which I think may be the biggest hack. Like, I think there's a shift in mindset from hobby seller or you sell stuff on the internet versus business owner, and I don't get the impression at all that you do not consider yourself a business owner the way that you treat your business.
Yeah, it's definitely a business, but I'm okay with looking like how you said the other day, the dude running in and out of his house. I'm perfectly okay with that.
And I think that, but the thing is, it looks like a dude running a store out of his house. It
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
professional.
I'm perfectly okay with that, as opposed to the perfect white background and mannequins, and I don't know that's not the angle or the customer that I really want to go for.
How's your experience been with free returns?
I don't have a problem. I'd rather pay the $3 than have someone be upset and leave a negative over $3.
That's a good point. Okay, so the photos are consistent. They're bright. It looks like a person's house, which is fine because of the way that you presented it. It's always the same. And your entire eBay business runs basically out of two rooms, just the listing area and the coffee table area. If you put a desk in your living room that was like the dining room table, it could just be one room.
Yeah, and I even could put a desk in there, but I have the space not to. The only thing after that would just be room for storage. But if you wanted to get a storage facility or something, yeah, you could do it out of one room.
And I think this is important to realize that you can run eBay out of a spare bedroom. You don't need an office or a warehouse space. And I want to point out that, the largest seller, right, or one of the largest, BHFO, they were doing $20,000 net per month in their house before they got a warehouse.
Yeah,
Like they
it's
didn't.
totally possible. I used to do 20,000 out of a bedroom, like you're saying.
Right. So you don't need to get that space in order to do that type of volume. Even with clothing, which in my opinion takes up way more space than like electronics or something smaller.
Yeah.
So important, guys, to realize you do not need a large space. But I will say one thing I noticed from this call, both of us have a dedicated listing area. There's nothing in my area where I list. So I'm not distracted by clutter or anything. What about
Yeah,
your space?
yeah, definitely. Like I said, the desk they run into a corner, so right in front of me is a white wall. So, like you said, you have to have a clear space and nothing to distract you. I have a white wall, and there's no TVs in this whole place, so it's not easily to get set back or distracted here.
That's really, really important. And I want to give some advice to some people who've been reaching out to me that say, I have 2,000 items that are unlisted, 3,000 items that are unlisted. In this situation where it takes up your whole house, I've seen this. What I would do is create a little space that doesn't have the stuff in it and facing the corner maybe so you don't see that, because it's going to be depressing. If you're already at that point now where you've let it get too far, you need to just I don't even recommend necessarily you stop buying. Just list more than you buy, because some people get really depressed and they need to do something. But I don't have an issue with that. As long as if you list 50 and buy 20, eventually you won't have any stuff left. So just create an area that you don't have to see it, because if you have to face all that junk in your house, you're not going to do any work.
Yeah, when I first started, you go to a bunch of thrift stores and let's say you come home with 25 items. Every single time I came home, I listed every single item that I got. It doesn't matter if it was 30 items, 50 items, 20 items. It didn't matter. Every single time when I came home, I listed every single item that I had, because back when you start, you're in need of the cash flow. So if I have all of these items in the corner, that's money sitting there. So if I came home with 22 items, that's what I listed that day, because I needed to get that cash back to reinvest in more stuff.
And that's so important. There are so many sellers that have way less things than you think, but they just list as soon as they get it.
Yeah, totally.
And I want to point out that there's another seller named Sam Cohen on the East Coast. That's he's like an 8-figure Amazon seller or something. And there's a rule in their company that it must be listed within 24 hours. So like, that's a really good rule to live by.
Yeah, I pretty much do the same thing. Like I said, I have 200 or 300 in queue. So what is that, a 3 or 4 day delay? That's the same thing.
Right.
It all goes up real quick.
I think for you do need a 3 or 4 day queue because of the weather.
Exactly. So if it rains the whole weekend and let's say I find 50 items a day, then I'm out 100 items immediately.
Right. I have never heard of anybody recommending more than a week to 2 weeks of inventory. So like it's not necessary unless, well, what do you do if somebody presents a lot to you and it's more than you could list in a day?
No, I have to get it done, because the other day, like I told you, I bought like 1,200 items at a garage sale. It was all clothing. I got all of them up within 3 days.
That's awesome.
So I mean, you can't have 1,200 items sitting there looking at you in the face. You got to get them up.
That is amazing. So one more productivity thing. Do you listen to music? Do you listen to movies? What do you do when you're listening?
I usually listen to podcasts or audiobooks. Sometimes I watch YouTube, but I just have it in the background. I'm not sitting there watching it. It's just on the headphones and I'm just working.
Gotcha. I'm in the same place now. I'm most productive when I'm listening to something that doesn't have any words for the most part. And then also, if I'm listening to a podcast, I've been trying this new method where I listen to the same podcast more than once, because I feel like there's so much information now and a lot of it is really good. So, instead of, I'm still listening to a lot of content, but some of the good stuff I listen to 2 or 3 times. And this rich guy told me that he doesn't read very many books, but he does all the stuff in all the books he reads. So I like that. I want to be it's not about how much information you get. It's about what you can do with it.
Yeah, especially if you're multitasking, you're going to miss a lot of what you're listening to. But for me, I'm one and done. I listen to it and on to the next one.
Gotcha. All right, cool. Well, thank you for spending time with us today. And then do you have any final thoughts on listing improvements before we call it a day?
Just every day, just try to push yourself to if you did 10 today, next week, try to do 15. And then after that, try to do 20. Because if you stay at 10 forever, you're never going to grow. And, most people want to grow their business to make the most money possible or be the most successful that they can. So it's just a lot of little things. If you can streamline those things, then you'll be able to grow your business and make more money.
And that's great advice. And I think that consistency is definitely just as important as how many listings you do a day. If you were to do 10 a day for a whole year, that's 3,650 items, even if you were only making $5 an item, which is very low. Even at that rate, that's still 15 grand. That's a lot of money for only potentially an hour of work with some practice. There's no other business in the world that you can make 15 grand in an hour a day.
From home.
There's no, and $5 profit items that's really low. That's a very, very low threshold.
I mean, realistically, it's easy to make $10 an item. Now you're talking $36,000 from home working an hour a day.
Right. And the thing is, work your way up to it. In the beginning, it's going to take you an hour to list your first item because you don't know, but it's going to get faster.
Absolutely.
All right, guys, we'll see you next week. Thanks for stopping by.